بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dear friends, welcome to DEA Foundation Forum. Today we will discuss the research topic 6 major reasons of the Muslims' decadence under the third subtopic intellectual stagnation. Intellectual stagnation. We have discussed essentiality of intellectual growth as desired by the Qur'anic instructions under previous 3 lectures. Quran for Innovation and Growth, lecture 49. Knowledge to achieve the purpose of man's creation, lecture 63, and the Quran as a source of knowledge to achieve the purpose of man's creation, lecture 65. The Quran is a comprehensive framework of a great religion which has given a complete code of life for the humanity to serve its purpose of creation. It encompasses the man's personal domain, religious obligations, and socio-economic landscapes with a lot of details, clarity, and depth. It gives philosophy of a dynamic life, and the universe. Departing from the classical view of the static world, one of the dimensions of the purpose of the man's creation is to remain engaged for the growth of material and intellectual resources in line with the laws of nature. Thus, the Quran's philosophy of a dynamic world boosts the man's vision for a growing, progressive, peaceful, and just society, enabling the mankind accomplish the purpose of its creation. The Quran knows the psychology of the man very well. Its knowledge accomplishes the man's personality so perfectly that he becomes an effective driving force of a faithful, benevolent, and progressive society. Rigorous pursuance of Quranic principles raises his intellect of the man and his vision to know the laws of nature and harness elements of the universe. Allegiance to the cause of Allah, 1. Service for the humanity by moving forward progressively and longing for the best reward of the hereafter together open up the ways of peace, prosperity, and freedom from worries and fears. It was in fact the progressive profile assigned to the man. Progressive profile. It is what the spirit of the Quran is. But unfortunately, the Muslims lost the pursuits for intellectual growth after setting great milestones during earlier centuries of Islam. Unfortunate. Thus, intellectual stagnation in later periods contributed noticeably in the Muslims' decadence. Now we will discuss this changing situation in some detail. Dear friends, the Quran has revealed several aspects of essentiality of intellectual growth in the man's life. At the creation of the man, his personality was envisioned as the vicegerent of Allah on the earth. To perform this difficult task, Allah created the man on his own nature and desired the man to adhere to Allah's nature, which means the man is desired to emulate Allah's character, His attributes. Most of the attributes indicate Allah's creative, expanding, growing, and innovative nature. To enable the man emulate Allah's attributes well, he was accorded with wonderful abilities of body and mind, knowledge, spiritual insight, and divine guidance, the Quran. He was empowered to grow and expand throughout the land and seas. وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. The word hamala in this ayat, the word hamala has been used about 64 times in the Quran. Imagine, 64 times. And it means to bear, breed, expand, carry forward, grow. It is all growing, about growing universe, expanding universe, innovation. Besides that, the man has been given command over the resources of the universe to emulate Allah's creative and innovative nature for improving his environment for the benefit of the mankind. Thus the man's nature of man, and his assigned role of vicegerency necessitate him to pursue the principles of growth and innovation to fulfill his obligation revealed in Surah Ar-Rum, wherein Allah has directed that the man should adhere to the nature of Allah upon which He has created all people. Allah has created the whole mankind on His own nature. The Quran has abundantly guided the man to employ his abilities of observation, reflection, reasoning, and meditation to enhance his command over the resources of nature for the benefit of humanity. Some of such Quranic references have been shown on the screen. Interested friends are requested to study them for knowing the value of intellectual evolution in Islam. So, dear friends, as a result of this great Quranic motivation, the Muslims in the earlier centuries of Islam marked historic achievements in several areas of intellectual pursuits. This motivation for learning got ignition, got flames, fire, when after the conquest of Byzantine and Persian empires, the Muslims found access to great Greek learning centers of Jundishapur, Haran, and Alexandria. The earlier Muslim rulers sent their representatives to other known learning centers of the world to collect scientific and philosophical works of the Greek and Latin origins, and several of them were got translated into Arabic. Such expanding scholarship, growing scholarship, led to opening up several institutions of higher research and studies that brought intellectual revolution in the Muslim world. The first and foremost trend changer trend changer introduced by the Muslim thought based on the Quranic verses was the expanding and growing nature of the universe against the Greek classic view of a static universe. Against a static universe. This anti-classic view negates materialism and determinism, giving the mankind hope for growth, progress, and freedom, especially the freedom of thought. Freedom of thought. This mindset of openness privileged the Muslim scientists as a bridge between the past and future scholarship. So, dear friends, contributions of the Muslim scholars were remarkable in all the branches, in all the fields of science and technology. However, their contributions in mathematics, physics, chemistry, medicine, navigational mapping, geography, astronomy, astrology, etc., set the baseline for their Western successors of the Renaissance era. The Muslim scholars whose works are widely acknowledged as precursor of the modern day science and technology are Abul Qasim al-Zahrawi, Jabir ibn Sinan al-Batani, Abu Ali Sina, Ibn Zakaria al-Razi, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Ishaq al-Kindi, Ibn al-Hisam, Ibn Ali al-Kabisi, and Ibn Abil Ala Zuhr. There are so many other names. I have just given some example of the most renowned people. Toledo and Sicily. Toledo was situated in Spain, Muslim Spain. So Toledo and Sicily were two most important learning centers in the Western world established by the Muslim rulers, which played significant role in transmission of Muslim scholars' works to their Western counterparts. The translators and teachers were Muslims and Jews who knew Arabic, Hebrew, Spanish, and Latin. This massive transmission of knowledge has been noted by Dr. Robert Briffault in his book, The Making of Humanity, in the words, listen, that science arose in Europe as a result of new spirit of inquiry, of new methods of investigation, of the method of experiment, observation, measurement, of the development of mathematics in a form unknown to the Greeks. And that spirit and those methods were introduced into the European world by the Arabs, Muslims. It's a great appreciation and honest appreciation, not exaggeration. So, dear friends, initiation of the golden era of intellectual glory in the Muslim world is indebted to most of the rulers of Umayyad and the first 2 centuries of Abbasid dynasties, who were themselves educated and they patronized learning as well. Educated and patronized. The intellectually motivated rulers during this period of political stability provided an environment of freedom of thought and patronage that institutionalized the learning and scholarship we discussed earlier. Knowledge and power during this era flourished, flourished hand in hand until the forces of disintegration overtook the Abbasid Caliphate, especially since the close of 10th century AD. Study of some important events will help understand the factors responsible for the decline of the Muslim power and intellectual stagnation during the later periods. 1. The Abbasids overthrew the Umayyad dynasty in 750 AD with the support of non-Arab Muslim, then called Mawali, mostly Shiite Muslims of Persian origin. Number 2. Abbasid support for Sunni sect. Earlier, they have been supporting Shia sect. Later on, they support for Sunni sect that caused grievances among non-Arab supporters, culminating into split of Abbasid Caliphate, and a parallel Fatimid Shiite Caliphate was established in 909, extending its control over Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, and Palestine. So it led to long-drawn mutual rivalry and destruction among the two caliphates, causing politico-intellectual decay of the Muslim society. Unfortunate. Third is Persian bureaucracy slowly replaced Arab aristocracy as the Abbasids established new positions of vizier and amir with excessive delegation of power. With excessive delegation of power that weakened the central authority of the caliphate so much that by 1000 AD the caliph was virtually under protection, under custody of the Bayyid Shiite emirs who possessed all of Iraq and western Iran. 4. Former Shiite supporters of the Abbasids had broken away, left the central caliphate to create a separate kingdom around Khorasan in northern Persia. Now look again on these 4 important events. So dear friends, if we closely and earnestly analyze the perspective of these facts, we can find that these events are just continuation of socio-political divide emanating from the old Roman-Persian Arab syndrome. I repeat, emanating from the old Roman-Persian Arab syndrome, visible since the days of battles of Jamal and Siffin. For the deception of innocent masses, the story behind was political, but for the deception of innocent masses, the socio-political divide has been maliciously, deceptively carved into religious divide or sectarian divide or sectarianism. Despotic ruling elites were aware of the charismatic spirit of the Qur'anic teachings, which in the past had led the Muslims in fighting out social disparities and economic inequalities, dismantling elitist distinctions and privileges, and granting full civic rights to slaves, women, and orphans. The ruling elites have always been afraid, fearful, apprehensive of the fact that if left uncorrupted, this humanistic spirit of Islam may ignite again to burn them into ashes. Thus, finding the growing political instability of the central authority of the caliphate, they felt encouraged to play their devious part as they did after the death of Hazrat Osman in depriving it of any possibility of resurgence as a formidable force again by corrupting its spiritual and intellectual lifeline, employing fallacies, deceptions, trickeries, and all possible unfair means. These elites were also supported by the enemies of Islam, who had been humbled in the war fields, and they found it convenient to seek revenge by camouflaging themselves as Muslims. Thus, all these forces joined hands to damage the Muslim community, which itself had lost inner resilience and coherence due to sectarian divide, perpetual internal strife, and moral degradation. Under such fragmented conditions in the Muslim world, the earlier pace of freedom of thought and intellectual pursuits was definitely, visibly restrained. The restrictive policies of the colonial rulers on the freedom of speech, thought, and intellectual discourse also played crucial role in intellectual stagnation in the Muslim world. So, dear friends, in the earlier part of our discussion, we saw the Quranic instructions for a progressive, innovative, and anti-classic profile for the Muslim society. Despite this fact, despite this historic evidence, some Western scholars, due to their ignorance or prejudices, have blamed Islam for the Muslims' decadence. However, this fallacy has been strongly refuted by several Muslim and non-Muslim scholars. In their view, major responsible factors are moral decadence, decline in intellectual and scientific activity, loss of dynamism in Islam after the rise of the dogmatism and sectarian rigidities or taqleed, socio-economic inequalities, closure of ijtihad, and religious reforms in view of emerging needs. Shibli Shammai, a Greek Catholic philosopher born in Syria, tracing the reasons of the Muslims' decadence, stated, "Listen, it was not Islam nor the Quran, but the power of the sheikhs, influences of the sheikhs. Sheikhs means religious leadership, which kept the Muslim Ummah weak and out of focus." Ibn Khaldun and Arnold Toynbee. Great historians, both agreed that civilizations die from suicide and not by murder, and the factors leading to this situation are socio-economic injustices, internal strife, moral decadence, reluctance to pursue the truth, and intellectual stagnation. The Quran emphatically with full force, directs to fight against all these evils to build an enlightened, vibrant human personality suitable for a just, progressive, and faithful society. In this context, I will suggest to kindly focus on the verses shown on the screen. Now, dear friends, choice is with us whether to rise as a just, benevolent, and progressive Muslim society pursuing the living force of the Quran and Sunnah, or to extinct as a worthwhile community from the global spectrum, staying victim of sectarian divisions, taqleed, and socio-intellectual stagnation. This is the choice. With this, we conclude our discussion here. These programs are recorded both in Urdu and English. Their videos can be watched on ideafoundation.com.pk website or its YouTube channel and Facebook. Their written versions are also available on the Idea Foundation's website. Please note code number of this program, Idea 1B R27 or lecture number 131. All friends are requested to subscribe the Foundation's YouTube web channel for the benefit of this noble cause. Thank you friends for participation. Allah Hafiz.